Good morning and welcome to Morning Coffee with Brigid. I'm Brigid Burke and today is the 2nd of December 2024. I'm running a little late today. I can see good morning, Alex. I'm running a little late today. I didn't wake up late. I had, and hello Sam. Good morning, afternoon, morning. I always kind of do that. Good morning. It's been kind of a, and hello, Melissa. Good morning. It's kind of it's cold. It's very cold today, I think. It's, the heat seemed to be going on quite regularly last night, like every 20, 30 minutes, which tells me that it's probably, like, really cold. I think they said it was going to get down to, like, 20 tonight or something like that, so it's rather a chilly day. We did have a really good day yesterday. Melissa's on now this morning. And actually, Melissa, this was a shirt I almost wore yesterday. She wore one that was different style, but quite similar. And good morning, Suda. So yesterday we had a good time. It was fun. We did, I think we did 10 readings over the day. And Melissa did her, aura photos. And, so it was it was a good time. And it was good to see everybody. Your photo was so cool. I want one someday. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's absolutely. I mean, it's too bad and I know that we do a lot of things remotely, but I think that's one thing, unfortunately, that has to be done in person. So, it would be, it was really cool. And we were kind of noticing the other day that a lot of people's colors were very, kind of indigo violet type colors, which are much, they tend to be interpreted as more higher spiritual or more highly intuitive kind of colors. Okay. And Melissa says, yes, it was a lot of fun. Yeah, it was. And we ended up having a really nice day. And, and it was just really good to see, it was really good to see Suda. It was really good to see Natalie. Paulina was there as well. These are people who I know, and Jenny, of course, and Jenny brought her sister-in-law. So it was, it was really, it was nice. It was a really nice day, and got to meet some other people, got to meet some of Melissa's clients, which was really nice. And, I would say it was a successful event, and hopefully we can, do more of those as long as I'm here. Yeah, it was great to see you all, Melissa, too. Yeah, absolutely. It was, I really, it's not all, I mean, I've done events before in the past where, actually, I don't know. I guess most of the events, I can only think of one event where I just went out feeling entirely drained. This is not one of them. And the other event actually that was like this was in Chester, right across the street practically. It was at the public house. I was invited to do it for like a PTO event or something. They paid me to do 3 hours of readings. And it was, that was kind of fun too. It was like a 1920s kind of party, which they didn't really tell me, but it was okay. I mean, the people were fun. The people running the event were great. The public house staff was great. So, like I said, I don't do a whole lot of, I don't know. It's not that I can't do these kinds of events, but I have also done events like this where I've had a lot of people who were highly, like they're just highly skeptical of the whole thing, which, people are entitled to be skeptical for sure. But it's very frustrating when they're literally just determined to keep you out when you're trying to read for them. And in the cards will tell me in the first house, be like, this person doesn't want to read you. Doesn't want you to read them. And I didn't have that. I didn't encounter that yesterday, although there were some people who might have been not quite as open energetically, but it was basically, I don't know, everything basically was fine. It basically turned out fine. So, So anyway, so this was a lot of fun. And the cards are accurate, is what Melissa said. Yeah, well, there were some things with certain people, particularly people that Melissa knows and that I don't. I don't know. Occasionally there's just certain things that would come up that, it can happen when you're a reader sometimes, that things will come up and you'll say, and you'll look at it and you kind of know what it means, but you don't necessarily want to say what it means to the client. It often turns out that there's some reason, there's a reason why it turns out the way that it did. And that's always one of the things about being a reader, is that sometimes when you see things that you're just kind of like, I don't know if I want to touch that. I could get in trouble for talking about this. So, there was a few things like that, and I just, I don't know, offhandedly something came up, and as it turns out, it just confirmed what I had thought. So about this, and I think that might be what you're referring to. But also, I think a lot of people felt it was everything was relevant. And like I said, I pull the cards and I read them, and they say what they say. So anyway, that's so that was a lot of fun yesterday. Last night was kind of weird for me because I had some very, very odd dreams, and probably because it's Mercury retrograde. There are dreams that are bringing up, like, and I think I'm trying to remember. Chiron is what I was reading all the aspects this morning, and now I'm like, I can't remember any of them. But Chiron is in kind of an awkward place right now because there's a wounding that I happen to personally have around relationship, and that was it was like front and center in dreams last night, and then also when I woke up this morning. So I started my day before I even did my morning meditation with some Rahani, because I was like, okay, I need to incorporate this, and still working on incorporating it. Quite honestly, I'm like still like kind of the whole solar plexus and everything is kind of like, it feels a little messed up right now. So. But it was interesting because it has a lot to do with wounding that I have around relationships. Because like I said, I've not been married since, I got divorced in 2003, right? So, and I've had maybe one serious relationship since then. And really nothing serious in the last 16 years. So, because we were just talking about that, it's funny, I'll hear people say, yeah, nothing's happened for me in like 2 years. And I'm like, oh, 2 years, that's pretty short. So yeah, but whatever, the wounding around that, the wounding that kind of maintains that state is kind of what came up for me last night. And, came up with some really weird dreams, which I won't go into, but when I was doing my morning meditations with Azrael and with Maka and with, they both more or less said, look, this wound is keeping you from seeing things that are out there. It's keeping you from seeing where there's opportunities. Like Azrael literally started the day with, like, what was it, La Poil, but it was like, I'm divided on this one. Because in other words, on the one hand, they want to be sympathetic to how I feel about things. On the other hand, they're like, you really need to stop feeling that way. Because he basically said something like, those 2 times, he says, you were not poisoned in the way that you seem to think you were. Which is like a real, like, it's kind of like saying, yep, you may be, your consciousness about this may be exaggerating how deep the betrayal was or how deep something was. And I don't know. I don't think that they're saying that stuff didn't go on or that my feelings weren't justified. But I think they're saying the fact that you're still hanging on to it now, ooh, heard that before. Oof, that's what, Alex has said, yeah. And it's not so much, again, I don't feel like they're saying, like, no, that you weren't wounded in this situation, but, you have to, from your guides. Okay, yeah. And it's like, you have to, they're like saying to me, you really need to let this go because you literally have what you want, like, right around the corner. And again, I don't quite know what that means, or who that means, but they said there's something, right, that's almost, it's like a 4 of Cups situation. There's almost something that's like right there, and you're just not seeing it because you're still in this mindset where you're kind of pulling back. You kind of go into that space where you just don't, you just want to do your own thing and you don't want to be bothered with anybody else. But what he mentioned was, he said there's a difference between feeling sovereignty, okay, which is where we feel free and where we feel that we are independent and in control of ourselves, and there's a difference between sovereignty and defense. Because when sovereignty is a defense mechanism, it's not sovereignty. And that was kind of the thing. Like, if you are, it happens a lot, and it happens a lot with women. And again, when I say this, I'm not saying this critically of women who do this, because the reaction is a very understandable one. When you have been in a relationship with somebody and there has been something, there could be some emotional abuse, there could be, some big cases, unfortunately, physical abuse for certain people, which I did not suffer in my relationships. But when there's been some kind of wounding that goes on, we do talk a lot about how the masculine a lot of times wounds because they just don't know how to deal with emotions. Now, mind you, it's like a lot of people, when people behave in a certain way, we understand that people have certain limitations. Those limitations don't necessarily become an excuse. It's not just like, oh, well, I had this thing happen to me, so now I can treat everybody like crap. That's not a thing. But at the same time, recognizing that there is a wounding there, you have to say, okay, well, there's a wound there. And this person may not know, or they may be doing the same thing that I'm doing. Like if I'm reacting from a place of trauma, if I'm saying, okay, I was in a relationship, these steps happened, now these steps happen again, that means I assume outcome will be the same as that relationship. They may be doing the same thing. They may see something and, there may not be the communication there. There may just be an assumption and a withdrawal and being like, okay, well, never mind, but maybe that's not the way to approach it, or the way to, because I said to him, I said, okay, well, understanding that, then what's the way to approach that? I said, and how would I express that to anybody else who might be dealing with whether it's specifically around relationships or not, how do people deal with this kind of scenario? And it was like the Fool card. It says you just have to be willing to take a risk. You just have to be, I also got the Ten of Swords in this particular deck. And as we know, that's the Nietzschean Ten of Swords that says we move from being complacent to being angry to being like a child again. He said, so it's just like, yeah, you're in this state for a reason, just move through it. Because he says, you really don't know where it's going to take you, but it's got to take you to a new place. Because the thing is, when it comes to our interactions with people, I think a lot of times we want certainty. We want to know, if you were to ask somebody about, if you had somebody who was in their teen years, let's just say, and let's just say they fall in love for the first time or something like that. And then it's like, well, how do you know when you have the right one? Now, okay, sometimes you have the right one because there's just some little inner voice that goes, yeah, that's the person, right? But a lot of times you'll hear people say certain things like, oh, well, you should never get seriously involved with anybody after, okay, I know somebody who said, okay, after 3 months, she would have men who wanted to get very seriously involved. And she says, okay, that 3 month thing, no, it has to be longer. That can't be it. On the other hand, there was my parents who were married for 60 years and got engaged after 6 weeks. So, it's one of those things where, we always think there's a certain period of time, or, oh, you need to get to know each other and live together first, or, oh, you need to. There's always the thing of like, oh, well, this is the thing that's going to determine whether you're going to have a long-term relationship or not. And the reality is that none of that is actually true. That might be true for certain people. People may feel that there are certain preconditions. But I've also told the story many times of this waitress, I knew her daughter, who lived with a guy for 15 years. And then as soon as they got married, it was like he was a different person. So you don't ever really know. It's always a big risk to get involved with people. Okay, it's always a risk to get involved in a relationship because you can't control the other person. Because they said that's the internal thing. You want to control how that person feels about you or how that person responds to you. But you can't do that. Any more than they can do it to you. They can't, how it is if you are very attracted to somebody, if they don't return the feeling, you can't, all of your trying to manifest a relationship, say, like people who do stuff like that. Why are you trying to manifest something? Why are you trying to interfere with somebody else's will, right? If that's not what they want, then that's not what they want. And, sometimes that's a hard pill to swallow, but that's what it is, because we wouldn't want people to do that to us. If there's somebody who is very attracted to us and we're just like, yeah, no, you don't want that person like forcing your boundaries, right? So, kind of go both ways. You don't want to do that with somebody else either. But I think also when there's wounding, because there's a lot that we see right now, especially, I think among some of the younger communities too, like kind of the Gen Z, millennials, maybe millennials are probably a little older than Gen Z, right? But there's this kind of thing about, people only do hookups, they don't get into a relationship, right? Or people have this thing of, there's a lot in there about women's empowerment and about all the red flags with a man. And as soon as a man does something, a certain thing, then it's like, all right, he's out. And, yeah, like literally this kind of very now again that doesn't mean that when somebody does something that clearly seems to show that they're not ready for a long-term relationship, it doesn't mean you should be like, oh well, I should just accept it because it's not that kind of a thing. But by the same time, I think sometimes there's a certain take no crap kind of thing, way of approaching things, that sometimes it's like, okay, is this just that this person is completely incapable of having a relationship, or what? It can be very cutthroat, I've noticed, in younger populations. Yes, that's what Alex is saying here. Yeah, and you're right. There tends to be this, like I'll read things, like I follow things like women's rights news and stuff, and sometimes some of the things they're posting, I'm like, well, this is kind of ridiculous, actually. I mean, yeah, you also see these girls who, oh, I keep trying to lose weight for my boyfriend and he says I'm not skinny enough. I mean, yeah, you see those kind of people too, and you're like, just get away from him. Like, you don't need somebody who's going to be judging you entirely on that basis. I mean, either they, you love somebody or you don't. But the question becomes, do people know how to relate? If it's the one kind of thing you can't control. It's like there's other things you can control in life. If you say, oh, okay, I want to do this as a career, then I know I need to go to school and I need to take steps X, Y, and Z, and I need to do this in order to. And I mean, and again, I suppose there's no guarantees there either. But at least if you have the credentials and you can network with the right people, maybe you can get to the place you want to be. When it comes to human feelings and human relationship, that is something you have no control over whatsoever. I mean, only your own feelings. You don't, and even that maybe you don't have control. Look, we've talked about the way in which certain archetypes project themselves, the soul archetype, and when it does, you can really have feeling. Even you could look at somebody and say, yeah, this relationship is never going to work, but the feelings are so strong, and you can't until the projection is satisfied to withdraw itself. There's nothing really you can do about it, and. I mean, okay, I guess you don't have to act on certain things, right? You don't have to, you don't have to take certain actions. You're not compelled to be with somebody, right? I mean, you can, but how you respond to it, the message that I was getting was like, okay, and I feel like this applies more broadly also to what we're talking about in terms of masculine and feminine and trying to bring it back together. Because the way it manifests in society, we've had a very patriarchal view of what a relationship should be like. And the question is, okay, well, how do you get away from that? How do you get away from the Cinderella view of marriage that sometimes people will have? And then the thing is, when they realize it's not Cinderella, okay, then it just becomes, well, then it's all bad. It's kind of like people can get that way about religion too. It's like, okay, I went to church. I grew up believing this, and this about God. Then certain things happened in life, and that completely shook me. And I said, well, I don't know if now I don't believe in God anymore, and all of it's bad. If you think about it kind of comparatively like that, it's like, okay, well, no, it's not all bad. It's just that. But if you're looking at it in black and white thinking, either all men are Prince Charming or all men are scum. I mean, that's kind of a pretty harsh dichotomy. So, but it seems like that's where people are trending. And you understand that when people have been through certain situations, that's probably going to be like the first stage of what they're going through when they separate from somebody. That they, if you've been through an abusive relationship, you may not be inclined to go jump into another one. In fact, it's probably a good idea not to, because you might just automatically repeat the same pattern if there's been a pattern that needs to be thought about and observed. But by the same token, I mean, I don't know. It doesn't necessarily mean, and some people just after that, they're just like, yeah, you know what? I'm happier by myself. It's fine. But then there's other people who I think, I don't know. Everybody's different, but I feel like that was the one thing that kind of came up this morning was, okay, certain ideas that you have about relationship. And the certain stories, if people have read the way that the characters are in some of my stories, I think it plays around with some of those themes. But as Asriel points out, he's like, yeah, but that's fiction. That's not what happened to you. That's fiction. You may be expressing the depth of that feeling or that feeling of betrayal, but it's still not you. And I think that's what he's saying. He says, so he literally said, I'm divided on this one. He's like, because on the one hand, he wants to be very supportive of me. And on the other hand, he's like, yeah, but if you're believing BS about the situation, then you need to call the BS out. You just stop looking at it that way. So I don't know. It was interesting. That wasn't something I thought I was going to talk about this morning, but it's kind of the thing on my mind, kind of front and center. So I was like, okay, well, there's no way I'm not going to be able to talk about it on the live stream. But in any case, interesting. It's an interesting thing to think about here. So having said that, and again, I don't know if that's particularly helpful to anybody here. Probably everybody here doesn't have that. Suda says, interesting. I was discussing with a friend life which incites growth and maturity. It's honestly helpful on point. Lots of reflection back on my starter marriage. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, that's it. Right. Growth and maturity at some point. Right. And I think maturity is part of this too, because it's like as you get older, you may realize that ideas maybe you had when you were younger aren't quite accurate. But usually we tend to think of it as, okay, like when people are teenagers and fall in love, you have the whole hormonal thing, and, people just can't stand to be away from each other and so on and so forth. And then once you get into a serious relationship, might not quite be that way. But then I think there's the assumption that that type of love is an impossible thing, that it's just not realistic. You can't, it doesn't last, and to a certain extent, yeah, you can't hold on to it. You can't pin it down. I mean, you kind of have to let it flow like everything else. And we all have days where there's some days where we want to be with people, and then there's days when we want to be by ourselves, and that's the flow, right? We have a flow of maybe, but when you live with somebody, it's a little bit different. It's like trying to figure out, how the two of you flow together, right? In terms of your moods, your feelings, your ways of behaving, but I think in my case, now, like I said, it's not that I haven't dated people. It's not that I haven't, met people, and that I haven't been, I don't know. It always tends to be, for me, it's like guys who are, they're interested, but not interested enough to get into a relationship, because it's almost like, well, you're interesting to talk to, but too intimidating to get into a relationship with. Oh, definitely a constant renegotiation. New me, meet new you is what Suda's saying. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. And the thing is, you have to have both people who are willing to participate in that too, right? Like, I would just think about my ex. Like, if I wanted to talk about things, he would just be like, I'm not talking about this. And he would just walk out of the room. Like, what do you do with that? What do you do with that? There's nothing, that's where people shut down, because it's like, well, okay, if there's going to be no conversation, then what? But I mean, it's a case of, if there's eventually a conversation, if it's just like, well, I don't want to talk about this right now, that may be one thing. But anyway, it's just, yeah, there's this negotiation and renegotiation, and I feel like what, is what Suda's saying. Yeah, well, the way I also look at it is, it's like, okay, it's almost like saying, okay, you had relationships that did not work out. It's kind of what my guides are saying, and fair enough. And things happened that shouldn't have happened. People, men may have behaved badly. Maybe I may have behaved badly too, because when you don't know exactly what you're doing, you can screw up. You can't beat yourself over the head for that, because that's a lot of times what we do. When we feel hurt, we start going back and saying, oh, why did I do this? And why did I let this happen? And why did I let that happen? Like, why didn't I have the knives out and the gates up? Well, because if you're trying to connect with somebody, that's not really the best way to do it, right? But I think, but at the same time, I don't know. It's just very, I think what my guides were trying to say was that, I think in your mind, the wound may connect to something else. Who knows? It could even be a karmic wound. Okay. It could be something that goes back, other lifetimes, I don't know. It could just be something that's triggered. So there's this constant assumption that there is there's a constant trauma around it. Like the feeling of being hurt or rejected or kind of put out is so strong that you literally just say, you would literally like put the fence up and say, okay, I'm never letting anybody in again because you don't want to repeat how it feels, right? But I think what he's saying is, he's like, you really weren't as badly poisoned as you think you are. It's not like you don't have an identity. It's not like you don't have, other interests. It's not like, I mean, if you don't take the risk, then nothing ever happens, So, and on the other hand, though, I know that there's just some men that you have to be careful how you take the risk with them, because, they're like squirrels outside, you kind of lure them in with peanuts, and then they and then if you get too close, they take right off. I don't know. That's just kind of my, squirrels, feral cats, whatever you want. But but in any case, and I don't know, I guess for me, I've just found that I don't have a lot of patience for back and forth. I don't have patience for hot and cold. I don't have patience for men who are like really, wanting to talk to you one day and then ice cold the next. And Alex says, yeah, absolutely, it can be subjective and unique. Well, yeah, exactly. It's a very subjective experience, and that's just the thing. There's no one thing you can really say about it. Everybody's experience is unique, and everybody's level of their commitment to a particular relationship or a particular if you're wedded to a particular, there's, depending on how invested you are in the relationship, is going to depend on how much you are willing to work on something, or how much you might be willing to forgive certain things. Some people, they just don't, it's like, one strike, you're out. But at the same time, I don't know, it's an interesting thing. We, talked about projections and so forth, but came up into my mind this morning. So yeah, so that's kind of been on my mind. That's kind of thing I'm working through. Of course, today's going to be a day for me where I'm cleaning the house out, so there's going to be no noon live stream today on Katonia. I do need to get something out. I think we've kind of decided on a date for we will have a little get together on Zoom. We were looking at Sunday, June 15th. June 15th. What? That was my dad's birthday. That's kind of weird. December 15th. Where June came from? That's weird. December 15th at 1 p.m. I think we said 1? Yeah, 1 p.m. Eastern time, Eastern New York time. So that seems to be the best for the majority of people. So I'll send out an email to everybody who's on my list about it. I'm taking classes and so forth. So yeah, so hopefully that works for a lot of people, that people can get together on that, for that. So yeah, you'll be there. Awesome. That's great. Yes. Yeah, and I'm trying to make time frames that are going to work for people in the UK, Europe, who want to participate. I'm also going to open it up to a lot of my Patreon subscribers too, the paid subscribers who might want to join, because I've been promising them like their own live stream forever, and sweet. Okay, we're gonna have Alex, we're gonna have Sam, and yeah, hopefully, like I said, hopefully that'll work. And I think I've talked informally to some people. Most people said it works. I think Pat was the only one who wasn't sure, but I know some things have shifted for her, so I don't know. I have to reach out to her too. But yeah, but we have different people, and I know people are finishing up in the ISFM, finishing up their projects and stuff too, so that'll be cool. And Suda says that should work. This is great. That's awesome. And yeah, so like I said, pretty much most of the regular participants here will probably get an invite from me. Yeah. So anyway, I'm going to let me do our reading for today. But that is where we're at. So wish me luck getting this dumpster filled up today, and trying to get stuff together for Habitat for Humanity and such. This is interesting. Interesting reading. All right. So we're starting with the Thunderbolt card. We're starting with the Tower. Okay. Tower, tearing down false structures. Okay. Relating back to kind of what I was talking about. Good luck. You'll be on a roll, I'm sure. Yes, you're right, Alex. I think once I get going, I just got to get, make a cup of tea, put some music on, and just, get going. Starting with the basement, though, so we'll see. It's cold out, so we'll see how it all goes. But, yeah, no, I'm definitely Um, you might look in the next live stream and the room might be quite empty. So we'll see what happens. But we're starting with the Tower. Okay, now the inner feeling of which we're unaware is interesting. We've got the Existence card. Okay, this is the Magician. But it's almost, and literally the meaning of this card is like, if you think the world's out to get you, go out and look at the stars. It's almost like saying we get ourselves, okay, there's almost an awareness. When it comes to personal interactions with people, we may get into this space of things being a bigger catastrophe than they are. Because it's like there was one of the dream cards that I have on wounding. They said, to be alive is to wound and to be wounded. It's going to happen. Is the wound fatal? Is the question really? Is it a fatal wound? And most of the time, no, it's not a fatal wound. It's something. It's the reality of some people will want to be with us and be in our energy, and some people won't. Right. The external feeling, though, of which we are aware, is the healing card. Okay, this is the King of Cups. So this is almost like a Rahani type thing, right? When I do Rahani with people, it's the idea that as the heart empties, it's not as you empty the heart, you've also got to break the stranglehold that the mind has on things as well. Because I think something that when people have had Rahani that sets them back a lot of the time is the feeling that the mind keeps taking them back to the same stories and the same narratives. So you have a release, but then the mind continually wants to drag you back to the space that puts you in that that makes you like, it's okay, you open up and you want to be vulnerable, and the mind keeps going, no, like no, have to do it this way, you can't let this, you can't do that, 100% is what Alex is saying. So as you're trying to open the heart, you also have to break the stranglehold of the mind, right? So this is the part of the healing that goes on. And as we can see in this card, it's the Anahata Chakra green space. We were talking about this the other day, right? When Melissa was talking about people's green energy as healing energy, right? And there it is. There's the Anahata Chakra, which is right in the center. And so this is interesting because the advice card is actually compromise. It's the Six of Pentacles. Okay, so the Six of Pentacles, again, this is kind of one of those cards. It's like an equal give and take. On the one hand, they're saying don't compromise your own truth. I think that holds, okay? But it also may be saying that sometimes when it comes to being with others, there's certain level of compromise we might have to make. If we're totally uncompromising with people, if we literally will not tolerate any deviation from our expectation from somebody, that could be a problem. That can be a big problem. But on the other hand, we don't want to compromise ourselves for somebody who maybe doesn't care about us or doesn't respect us, right, in a certain way. So you've got this energy here of this. And our outcome card is the Queen of Wands. This is the sharing card again. We got this yesterday. So what is Queen of Wands energy? Queen of Wands is powerful energy. Queen of Wands is beautiful energy. Queen of Wands is, personality-wise, sometimes I've talked to friends who have said that Queen of Wands personalities, like they either like them or they don't, but Queen of Wands is somebody who's ambitious, who is kind of determined to live their life their way. But in this particular deck, it's referred to as the sharing card. So this is not about, building your fort and then living your life in your fort. I think that's kind of the problem, is that you can't, when you kind of build a fort around yourself, I mean, you feel comfortable and safe there, but then you're very isolated there as well. So it's like, okay, where are you willing to compromise, basically? Where are you willing to do that? Again, you don't want to compromise your truth, but sometimes we project things onto people and assume that they have motivations that maybe that they don't have. Okay, always assuming the worst about somebody, right? Oh, they did this, therefore it means that. And again, I'm not saying that there aren't certain signs with people that you can't tell and that there aren't certain things that you need to be careful of. But I always find that that's the hardest thing. There's kind of a spectrum, and we can't get very far without community. Right, that's what Sam said. Yeah, right, that's what Sam's saying. Yeah, it's exactly. You can't, you can, it's okay when sometimes you can hide away for a period of time. you can't, if you can't spend the rest of your life hiding away. It's like, okay, you need to you need to be out there with people. There's only so much, but it's interesting because it has to do with the ways in which we protect ourselves. And I think the key thing that it's kind of trying to say here is that what if the compromise isn't possible? Well, when it's not possible, then we just have to kind of walk away from the relationship. I mean, that's about it. I mean, certainly there are people who will if somebody's asking you to compromise something that's very fundamental to you and who you are, then I mean that's like a deal breaker. There's no doing that. But I think we're thinking about things that maybe are a little bit more minor that people sometimes will just say, I don't know, like just to give you a stupid example, like living with somebody and being like, well, he always leaves the toilet seat up, so the hell with him, I'm not living with him anymore. I mean, stuff like that where it's just kind of like, okay, everybody kind of has quirks. There's a line between quirks of behavior or just quirks of doing things that can be annoying to us, and maybe ours are annoying to other people's, who knows, right? But just literally saying, having somebody who's telling you that you, the way you are and who you want to be is unacceptable, or they want you to be something that you're not. Well, then that's not something you compromise. That's something where you have to say, sorry. But it's hard. But what is the answer? And there may be certain relationships and situations where maybe you can't compromise, but also you can't walk away. For example, people have this with their children, like, or maybe even, I mean, with a spouse, technically you could, but some people don't always feel that that's what they should do, and I often find that it's hard with men. Sometimes it's in a yes and no situation. Yeah, that's it. It's like, it's really hard because there's always a big picture. It's not just about the two people. So sometimes everybody has to make their own decision based on what the big picture is. And sometimes eventually somebody just has to say, okay, well, that's just the way this person is. There is not a 60-40 or 70-30 compromise, is what Suda's saying. Yeah, well, no. And the thing is, I feel like when I'm in a situation with people where I'm sharing space with people, which I haven't done in a while, but if I'm sharing space with someone who I feel like is not, like I need to do me, I need to do things the way that I do them. They're just committed to doing something their own way. Then the question then becomes, well, okay, the fact that they're not willing to meet halfway, or like you're saying 60-40, 70-30, how harmful is that to the big picture? How harmful is that to the big picture? If it's something that's a personal choice to them and it's just going to affect them and not affect you, then all right, well, you do you then. If it's something that's going to do significant damage to the bigger picture, like when I had a spouse who insisted that I be the one to work all the time, but he was too stressed and he was just going to sit at home and do nothing. Yeah, well, that's harmful because I can't maintain the whole financial burden of this relationship. There's two people here. It's not just me by myself, right? So, yeah, that's not negotiable. Sorry, you have to work, and if you're not willing to work, then you're out. I mean, it's that kind of a thing. And that certainly wasn't the only issue there, but it was just, that was just one of the things. If we're talking about approaches or emotional things, again, it's kind of a case by case basis. I don't know that I would make a blanket statement about it, but sometimes if you have a partner who's not willing to compromise on certain things, and you feel like you're frustrated, or you feel like there needs to be a change, and the question just becomes like, okay, what will happen if I just let them go on doing what they do? How harmful is it really going to be? I mean, it might be harmful to them in some way, or maybe there's just something where they have to ram their head into the wall enough times to figure something out. But if it's something you're like, no, this is going to affect, this is going to have an effect on other people involved, then there has to be I don't know, it sounds like there needs to be like kind of an ultimatum as to what the thing's going to be. So, anyway, I don't know. I mean, again, depends on the situation, I guess, is what it comes down to. But compromises are, you can't always compromise. But I think what this is saying in this particular reading is that sometimes we have to see where we can negotiate. And if negotiation's not possible, then, we have to say, okay, we've done our best to be fair and we're walking away from the thing. So yeah, I don't know. That may or may not be helpful, and that may be completely and totally diffuse. But but that's just kind of the vibe that I have there. So yeah. So I don't know. I guess that's kind of all I've really got for today. I know we're like 2 minutes early. I'm gonna flip a couple more cards here. But yeah, that's kind of what I've been thinking about this morning, and we'll see. See where it goes. But I've always said that when you're kind of dealing with those kinds of emotional things, like, yeah, the only way out is kind of through. And we have our Ace of Wands card. This comes up a lot. This has been coming up a lot this week. I keep pulling that because I feel like there's this new beginning that's trying to happen for a lot of people. Wheel of Fortune and also Judgment. I mean, can we say anything about the wheel is turning? We need to wake up to things are changing, and it's time for a new beginning. And I mean, yeah, and it's Ace of Wands, it's Aries energy, right? That's happening collectively. We're going to be moving into that space. And of course, right? Yeah, is what Alex is saying. Yeah, we're moving into this collective space that we are, Wheel and Fortune of Judgment are majors, right? Major arcana. We're definitely not, we don't really quite know. This new beginning is still malleable. We don't know what we're going to do with it yet. It's minor arcana. But the ending and the needing to recognize the pattern, the needing to recognize the pattern is absolutely, that's the critical thing right now. What we make of the new beginning, I feel like a lot of times, we were talking a lot yesterday about timeline shifts. There was a number of people talking about timeline shifts, and we've been talking about it here too. But I also feel like some of those timeline shifts happen based on what we decide, and if we're making decisions based on faulty information, and that's where the Tower comes in. You have to tear the structure down so that we can look at things the right way. Even if looking at what the Tower tears down can be uncomfortable, it's like, yeah, but moving through that space teaches us something. Just staying with it and not trying to run away from it or defend ourselves from it. It's just like, okay, this is what it is. But it's a process that takes courage. Although I feel like I was seeing a lot of that in a lot of people's readings too. It's like a lot of people are very, very courageous people who are just kind of like, okay, I'm ready to get in there and do the work, whatever it takes. And, even if it's not always pleasant at times. So anyway, thought I'd share a little bit of that. Like I said, I don't necessarily always like to share that stuff, but I also feel like, okay, well, if you're coaching people, then you need to have your own stuff together too, to be able to help other people with their stuff, right? So sometimes it's just good to, talk about it, and as you talk about it out loud, it makes more sense to you, right? So anyway, hope you guys have a great week. It's Monday. Have a good luck with everything that's going on this week. You're welcome. More applicable to me than you probably think. Well, that's good. I mean, yeah, well, that's also kind of what I got, that this is not just, as always, it's not just about me, but I'm talking about something that's been a little bit more personal right now. So that's but yeah, typically speaking, I always find that by no means is just like, this only happens to you, Brigid, and nobody else. So I'm glad that it's helpful to some people here today. Okay, so I will get some emails out this week, and and I'm readings Aries through Virgo. I've only got 2 done so far. Yes, you're welcome, and yes, it was good to see you guys today. And so readings should be up probably by Tuesday, by the time I'm going to try to fit them in here and there today while I'm doing my other stuff. So everybody have a great week, and I will catch up with everybody tomorrow, and I'll see you all guys all soon. So take care.